Rain pelted the glass walls of the Carrington Tech executive suite like nature itself was grieving. The room was sleek, silent, and cold, much like the man who stood behind the massive mahogany desk. Lennox Carrington barely glanced up as the woman in front of him waited for clarity. She was calm, though her hands trembled as they tightened around the strap of her leather purse. "You're dismissed." 3 words. That was it. No explanation, no warning, no decency. The words hit Amira harder than she expected. Not because she didn't see it coming, but because, after everything, he couldn't even look her in the eye. He spoke as if she were furniture, something he once needed, but had outgrown. Lennox moved a file folder aside and clicked his pen. It was a final gesture. Dismissive. Cold. Done. Understood, Amira whispered, though her voice barely made it past the lump in her throat. She turned, heels clicking softly against the marble floor as she walked toward the elevator. Her vision blurred as she fought to keep her shoulders straight, her dignity intact. The moment the elevator doors closed behind her, the tears came, not in loud sobs, but in silent streams that burned. This wasn't just a termination, it was an erasure. And he had no idea what that moment cost her. No idea what she carried in her arms, just beneath the thick wool coat. Not vengeance, not rage. A child. His child. The child they made together that night. The night he let himself be human. Amira blinked quickly, holding the tears back. She pressed a hand gently over her coat, right where her baby's body nestled against her chest in a soft sling. He slept peacefully, unaware of the storm he'd been born into, unaware that the man who fired her was the same man who gave him life. As the elevator descended, Amira spoke so softly even she barely heard it. "You fired the mother of your son." 16 months earlier, the world looked very different. Amira Walker walked through the revolving glass doors of Carrington Tech with a sense of nervous excitement. She wasn't a typical hire. No Ivy League background, no glowing referrals, just raw talent, hustle, and a portfolio of freelance design work that spoke louder than any resume. Initially hired to consult on a renovation project, she hadn't planned to stay. But when Lennox Carrington's longtime executive assistant quit unexpectedly, HR scrambled. The team remembered Amira, how she handled the last-minute change requests, her respectful demeanor, her precision. They offered her a temporary admin role. It was meant to last a few weeks. It lasted nearly a year. Lennox Carrington was not easy to work for. He wasn't loud or abusive. He was worse. He was cold, unreadable, mechanical in his praise and lethal in his disapproval. Most people in the company feared him, but Amira didn't. Not because she was brave, but because she had grown up learning how to keep peace with unpredictable people. Her late aunt called it weathering storms in silence. So, she adjusted to his moods, anticipated his patterns. She managed his calendar, fielded calls, and reorganized his inbox so well that even he noticed. "You're surprisingly efficient," he said one evening without looking up from his screen. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but it was more than he'd said to her in 2 weeks. She nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Carrington. You don't need to thank me. Just keep it up." He went back to typing. Their conversations rarely lasted more than 10 seconds. Yet slowly, the silence between them shifted. He began leaving her brief notes of appreciation, a scribbled good catch when she flagged a scheduling conflict, a curt approved when she suggested a vendor swap that saved the company thousands. For a man of wealth and power, Lennox was strangely lonely. He kept long hours, often staying in the office well past midnight. Amira would occasionally stay too, waiting for a chance to tidy up loose ends or simply avoid the long commute home. Sometimes they worked in the same space, without speaking. The air between them was always still, always charged, like something unspoken hovered just beneath the surface. Everything changed the night of the gala. It had been a long day. Their team was finalizing arrangements for Carrington Tech's annual charity event, a night designed to showcase Lennox's softer side, though few believed he had one. A storm rolled in unexpectedly, delaying staff and trapping Amira and Lennox alone in the top-floor office. The power flickered once, then twice. Amira busied herself with stacks of invitations while Lennox paced, hands deep in his pockets. Then he spoke, not to give an order, but to share a truth. "I hate silence during storms," he said. Amira looked up, confused. "My brother died during one. Car accident. Power was out. We couldn't reach him for hours." She had never heard his voice like that. Raw. Frayed. "I'm sorry," she said, voice soft. "He was my twin." That stopped her. "I didn't know. No one here does." There was a long pause. Amira didn't fill it with empty words. She just sat with him in the stillness, letting the weight of grief breathe. He sat beside her. Not too close, but close enough that she could smell the faint scent of his cologne, expensive, understated. She watched his shoulders rise and fall. When he turned to look at her, something broke between them. Not in chaos, in stillness. It was a kiss, born not out of passion, but loneliness. She didn't pull back. He didn't rush. When his lips met hers, it was hesitant, almost apologetic. His hands hovered near her waist, unsure. She reached for him, gently, giving permission. The night unfolded slowly. Their movements were careful, exploratory, a quiet meeting of pain and comfort. No declarations, no expectations. When it was over, he sat beside her, fully clothed, staring out at the dark skyline. "Thank you," he said. She smiled, small and sad. "You don't have to thank me." He didn't respond. The next morning, everything reset. He greeted her with a cold nod, as if nothing had happened. Introduced her to visiting executives as our temporary assistant. Never mentioned the night. Never acknowledged it. Never looked at her the same. But she remembered. Every glance she gave him was loaded with memories he chose to forget. Every task she completed under his orders was a reminder of the unspoken. And when the rumors started, whispers that she had moved up the ranks through his bedroom, he said nothing. He didn't defend her, didn't shut it down, didn't protect her name. The sting of that silence was worse than rejection. It was betrayal. By the time her cycle was late and the nausea crept in, she had already decided she'd say nothing. The man who couldn't even acknowledge her as a person didn't deserve the title of father. He could have asked. He could have checked. But he didn't. He moved on. So she did too. Until today. Until the moment he looked at her, made a judgment and dismissed her, again, without knowing the full truth. But this time, she wouldn't break. She would walk out with her head high. And this time, she had someone worth walking out for. The lobby of Carrington Tech glowed with polished marble and minimalist perfection, but Amira barely noticed it. She stepped out of the elevator, adjusting the thick scarf draped over her chest to make sure Noah stayed shielded. His little body was warm against hers, snug in the baby sling, blissfully unaware of the weight his mother was carrying. Her shoes echoed softly as she crossed the vast space toward the exit. No one looked at her. That was the cruelest part. She wasn't escorted out like a scandal. She was simply invisible. She pushed through the glass doors and into the grey drizzle. A black car waited at the curb. Layla was behind the wheel, engine running, eyes scanning the doorway like a hawk. As soon as she spotted Amira, she opened the passenger door from the inside. Amira slid in carefully, sighing in relief as the door shut and separated her from the world. "Well?" Layla asked, her voice calm but edged with quiet fire. Amira unwrapped the scarf just enough to check on Noah. He stirred slightly, then settled again. She smoothed his curls with gentle fingers. "He fired me," she said. Layla didn't respond right away. Her hands tightened on the wheel, jaw locked. "Did he know?" she finally asked. Amira shook her head. "No. He didn't even look at me. Just said I was a distraction and told me to leave." Layla looked away, muttering something under her breath that Amira didn't catch. "Don't go there," Amira said softly. "He's not worth the energy." "You keep saying that," Layla replied, "but he's still taking your peace." "You let him." Amira didn't argue. She couldn't. Because Layla wasn't wrong. 6 months earlier, the pregnancy had hit her like a slow burn. It started with nausea, then the fatigue, then a missed period. Her first instinct was denial. She convinced herself it was stress, or bad food, or maybe a flu. But deep down, she already knew. The test in her bathroom drawer had sat unopened for 2 days. When she finally found the courage to use it, her hands shook as she waited for the result. 2 pink lines. It felt like the world tilted sideways. She sat on the bathroom floor, knees hugged to her chest, tears sliding down her face. Not because she wasn't strong enough, but because she knew what was coming. She was alone. There would be no partner's arms around her, no joyful reactions, no future planning. Just her and a baby, and a man who couldn't even say her name in a room full of executives. When she told Layla, her best friend didn't ask, "Are you keeping it? Or what are you going to do?" She simply came over with ginger tea, prenatal vitamins, and a fierce hug. "I got you," Layla whispered that night. It was the first time Amira let herself cry in someone else's arms. Back in the car, Layla glanced at her again. "You sure you're okay?" Amira nodded slowly. "I will be. I have Noah. That's enough." But a part of her hated how small she felt. Not because of the job, not even because of the firing, but because Lennox Carrington never once gave her the dignity of acknowledgement. Not for the work she did, the loyalty she gave, or the night they shared. He erased her like she was nothing. And now, he didn't even realize he had a son. She told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't need him. But part of her still wished he had looked up, looked at her face, seen something familiar, something that reminded him of that night. Instead, he looked right through her. That night, after putting Noah to sleep, Amira sat on her small couch, nursing a warm cup of tea while Layla folded laundry in the corner. The TV buzzed low in the background, but neither of them paid attention to it. "He's not going to find out, is he?" Layla asked, not looking up from a tiny onesie she folded with care. "No," Amira said. "Even if he does, he'll twist it into something ugly. Say I kept it from him on purpose, that I was trying to trap him. You're not. You never were. He wouldn't believe that." Layla finally looked up. "And if he wants to be a father?" Amira gave a sad laugh. "Lennox Carrington? A father? He doesn't even know how to be human. People change, Ami. Not him. He's built his life on control. A baby would wreck that. But he is the father." Amira held her cup tighter. He didn't want a child. He wanted a quiet night, and for things to go back to normal the next day. That's what he chose. Silence stretched between them. Layla finally nodded. "Then we raise Noah right, with love, with presence, without ghosts." Amira gave a tired smile. "Exactly." Over the following weeks, Amira threw herself into small design gigs. Her home slowly transformed into a calming haven filled with soft lighting, neutral colors, and touches of joy. Like the bookshelf Layla helped her build, or the tiny art prints she designed for Noah's nursery wall. Each day, she felt herself returning. Stronger, wiser, clearer. She didn't miss the company. She missed what she thought she'd built, a reputation, a future, a place where her work spoke louder than gossip. But none of it mattered now. She had Noah, her business, and peace. Still, there were moments, in the still of night, where she'd sit in the nursery chair, watching Noah sleep, and wonder if Lennox ever thought about her, if that night ever crossed his mind. But she never let that curiosity win. One morning, as she loaded Noah's bag into his stroller, her phone buzzed with an email. It was from Carrington Tech's community division, an invitation to attend, a tech launch showcase open to former vendors and design contributors. Layla glanced at her phone and arched a brow. "You going?" Amira shrugged. "Might be good to get out. Let people see my face again." "You mean his people?" "I don't care about him. I care about my reputation." Layla didn't push. She trusted Amira to set her boundaries. 2 days later, Amira dressed in a simple navy wrap dress and comfortable flats. Her hair was pulled back neatly, skin glowing from weeks of intentional self-care. Noah stayed with Layla until the sitter cancelled an hour before the event. "He's coming with me," Amira told Layla, who offered to cancel her shift to help. "No," Amira insisted. "It's a tech event, not a confrontation. He probably won't even be there." But fate doesn't ask for permission. And by the time Amira arrived at the exhibit hall, holding Noah on her hip, she had no idea that the man she was trying to forget was only steps away, and that the eyes watching her, recognizing something too familiar in her son's face, would stop everything. Have you ever been dismissed by someone who didn't care enough to know your truth? Maybe you've given your all to a job, a relationship, or a person, only to be treated like you never mattered. Amira walked out with dignity, but how many people carry heartbreak in silence every day? If you've ever felt invisible in a place you gave your heart to, comment "I deserved better" below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories from Mr. Charles Stories. Carrington Tech's headquarters was usually quiet after 8 p.m., but that night a storm rolled in like an omen. The wind howled against the towering glass windows. Thunder shook the sky. And inside the 17th floor, only 2 people remained. Lennox Carrington sat behind his desk, jacket off, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. His eyes were locked on a blueprint of the gala venue. Next to him, Amira Walker flipped through vendor contracts, her laptop glowing softly. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was familiar now. Lately, Lennox had started requesting her presence more often. Never in so many words. But she noticed. The last-minute schedule changes. The private meetings he didn't include anyone else in. The long hours where he didn't send her away. He hadn't said it, but something had shifted. Amira kept her focus on the budget summary, scribbling a note in the margin. The caterer added a service fee. That wasn't in the original quote. Lennox didn't look up. Cut them. Without an alternative? You'll find one. There it was. His default tone. Sharp, efficient, cold. But beneath it, something had softened. The room flickered. The overhead lights blinked twice, then dimmed. A clap of thunder cracked the sky so hard the window panels shook. Lennox leaned back in his chair. "Well, that's dramatic." "Typical New York spring weather," Amira said with a small laugh. "Unpredictable and inconvenient." He glanced at her for the first time that evening. "Do storms bother you?" "Only when I'm alone." He looked at her longer this time. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. "I hate the quiet they bring." Amira tilted her head. "Why?" There was a long pause before he answered. "My twin brother died in a storm like this. Drunk driver hit him. He was coming home from a fundraiser I was supposed to attend. I skipped it. We lost power that night. Couldn't reach him for hours." His voice was even, controlled, but Amira heard the break behind it. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "He was the better half," Lennox murmured. "Smarter, warmer. People liked him. I've spent 10 years filling in for someone no one remembers is gone." The room felt heavier. Amira closed the laptop gently. She wasn't sure what to say, so she didn't try to fix it. She didn't offer cliché comfort. She just sat with him in the stillness. Sometimes presence spoke louder than sympathy. "Everyone assumes I'm just cold," he continued, voice lower. "What they don't realize is, cold is better than broken." Amira stood slowly and walked to the bar cart. She poured a glass of water and set it gently on his desk. He looked at it, then at her. "No scotch tonight." "I don't think you need more silence." Lennox studied her, something shifting behind his eyes. "You're different," he said. "Different how?" "You listen." She smiled faintly. "It's easier than pretending I don't see the cracks." For the first time, he didn't deflect. Instead, he stood, walked around the desk, stopped a foot away from her. The room buzzed with silence. Not tension, not lust, something deeper, sadder. His fingers grazed the edge of her sleeve. She didn't move. "I don't want to be this man forever," he said. Amira's voice was quiet. "Then stop choosing to be." The next moment was small, a breath, a step, A kiss. It wasn't wild. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, measured, almost uncertain. Their lips met like a question being asked and answered at the same time. Lennox's hand cupped her face, thumb gently brushing her cheek. Amira's fingers slid up to his collarbone. The thunder outside faded beneath the sound of quiet exhale. There was no urgency in their touch, only recognition. He was tired of silence, and she was tired of being unseen. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Lennox pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. His breath was uneven. "If you want to stop." She shook her head. "I don't." He led her to the couch, not with force, with care. Like every step forward, asked for permission. They undressed slowly. No sudden moves. No hunger for control. Just skin and breath and grief, wrapped in something soft and unnamed. His lips found her collarbone, her hands pressed against his chest. They moved like two people who needed to feel something real, something honest, and when it ended, they didn't speak. They just lay there, wrapped in silence, not the kind that haunted, but the kind that held. Lennox stared at the ceiling. Amira rested her head on his arm, heart still beating fast but steady. "Thank you," he said quietly. It was the only thing he said all night, and in the morning, it was like none of it happened. The following morning, Amira arrived at the office 20 minutes earlier than usual. The sky had cleared, but the storm still echoed in her chest. Her fingers clutched the strap of her work bag as she stepped into the elevator alone, replaying the night in her mind like a dream she wasn't ready to wake from. The warmth of his hands, the gentleness in his eyes, the honesty in his silence. It had been the most human version of Lennox Carrington she had ever seen. And yet, as the elevator doors slid open, she already knew what was waiting for her. Distance, denial. The man from last night was nowhere in sight when she stepped into the suite. His door was closed. His assistant inbox pinged once, twice. She placed a cappuccino on his desk as always, organized the day's itinerary, and settled into her seat like nothing had changed. But everything had. Around noon, the door to his office opened. Lennox walked out in a tailored grey suit, jaw clean-shaven, voice already halfway into a phone call. "I don't care what the shipping report says. If it's late, we lose the contract," he said flatly. He passed by her desk without even glancing her way. Amira's chest tightened. She waited for a flicker of recognition. A pause. Anything. Nothing. He spoke to her only once the entire day, to ask for an updated guest list. He didn't use her name, didn't make eye contact, didn't nod, didn't smile. "Just send it to my inbox." And when he introduced her to the new board liaison the following morning, it was with a practiced tone. "This is our temporary assistant, Amira Walker." Temporary. She stood beside him, a tight smile stretched across her face. Not "this is Amira." Not "she's been running this project." Not even executive assistant. Just temporary. That was the beginning of the shift. The glances became shorter, the requests more transactional. He stopped leaving notes of approval on her desk. Stopped staying late. The air between them was no longer charged, it was sterile. Whatever he had shared that night, the grief, the loss, the tenderness, he buried it. And with it, her place in his world. The rumors started 2 weeks later. Whispers in the break room. Snide comments from the marketing team. "She only got that job because she's pretty." Word is she spent the night in his office once. She's smart, sure, but let's not pretend her connections didn't help. Amira kept her head down. She didn't respond, didn't feed the fire. But each word chipped away at her, not because they hurt, but because he let them stand. Lennox never defended her, never acknowledged the gossip, never shut it down with one look, one line, and he could have. All it would have taken was a single sentence. "She's here because she's the best," but he said nothing. And in his silence, they built a story she couldn't undo. She stopped staying late, started taking her lunch breaks outside. The office no longer felt like hers. It never had, but at least it used to feel safe. Until the day she got dizzy in the middle of a vendor call. She excused herself quietly, rushed to the restroom, and locked the stall. 10 minutes later, she was still sitting on the floor, forehead against her knees, breathing slowly through the nausea. She didn't need a test. She knew. Back at her apartment that night, she took 3 tests anyway. Each one confirmed what she already felt in her bones. She was pregnant, with Lennox Carrington's child. When she told Layla, her friend didn't blink. "Well, that explains the nausea," Layla said, handing her a glass of cold ginger tea. Amira nodded, eyes red. "You gonna tell him?" "No," she said without hesitation. Layla raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" "He doesn't care. He made that clear. Besides, if I tell him, he'll think I'm trying to get something from him, that I want his money, his attention, his pity. You don't want anything from him." Amira shook her head. "I just want peace, and he doesn't come with peace." The next morning, Amira emailed her resignation. She framed it around needing to pursue long-term freelance opportunities. Lennox didn't respond, not even a thank you. She boxed her things quietly, avoided eye contact with the team, and slipped out during lunch hour. No goodbye lunch, no handshake, no closure, just silence. She told herself it was for the best, that walking away was strength, that disappearing would give her the space she needed to rebuild. And in a way, it did. She rented a modest 1-bedroom apartment on the east side. She turned her guest room into a nursery. She picked up small design projects, mostly referrals from former clients who valued her integrity and skill. But some nights, while folding tiny onesies and sorting newborn diapers, she'd remember his hands on her waist. His voice, raw from pain, the way he said thank you, like it was the only truth he could give. And part of her would ache, not because she missed him, but because she wished the man from that night had been real, not just a moment of weakness in a storm. 4 months into her pregnancy, Layla offered to move in temporarily. "Not because I think you can't handle it," she said, "but because I want Noah to have a village, even if it's just 2 aunties in a walk-up." Amira smiled at the name, Noah. She'd chosen it weeks earlier. It meant rest, peace, new beginning, a quiet strength. She never told Lennox, never wrote a letter, never sent a picture. She'd made her choice. She wouldn't demand anything from a man who never chose her back. When her old contact at Carrington Tech reached out with a freelance offer to help redesign the company's downtown branch, Amira hesitated. "They're launching a new innovation lab," the message read. "We remembered how detailed your event layouts were. Are you available?" It had nothing to do with Lennox. It came from a different division. The offer was fair, the timeline short. Amira accepted. She told herself it was work, nothing more. But when she walked through the polished halls at 6 months pregnant, with her coat drawn tight, and her head held high, she still caught her breath when she heard his voice in the hallway. It was brief. He passed by, didn't recognize her, didn't notice the curve of her stomach or the tightness in her eyes, only saw her face. And that alone was enough for him to snap. The conference room buzzed with light conversation and professional tension. Amira kept her head down, laser-focused on the mock-up layouts projected on the screen. She didn't want to stand out. Not today. Not here. Her contract with Carrington Tech was only for 6 weeks, but every time she stepped into the building, old emotions stirred. The floors were the same. The rhythm of meetings hadn't changed. Even the assistant at the front desk still offered that half-smile she used to give when gossip was in the air. Amira had tucked her growing belly behind carefully tailored cardigans and oversized blazers. No one questioned it. Her professionalism remained sharp, her voice clear, and she never lingered. The job was simple: redesign the event space and tech booths for a new innovation lab Carrington Tech planned to unveil in spring. The team she worked with came from another floor, a group of marketing leads and junior designers who didn't know her past. That was a blessing. Until the day Lennox walked in. She didn't know he'd be attending the site review. His name hadn't been on the invite list, but there he was, standing beside the head of operations, like he owned the air around him. Crisp grey suit, no tie, eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Her stomach twisted. She stood at the far side of the room, pretending to examine a lighting diagram, hoping, praying, she could finish the day without confrontation. But Lennox's gaze found her anyway. He paused, eyes narrowing. Amira didn't flinch, didn't blink. She turned a page in her binder and forced her body to stay still, even as her heart pounded. He didn't say anything, not yet, but the meeting ended sooner than expected, and before she could escape, she heard his voice behind her. Walker. The name struck like a slap. He hadn't called her that since her second month on the job. She turned slowly. Calm. Mr. Carrington. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. You're here, under contract. Yes. Temporary consultant. I wasn't informed. That makes two of us, she replied coolly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. This isn't appropriate. Neither was what happened between us, but here we are. For a moment, he froze. The silence between them said more than either of them could articulate. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't hostility. It was unfinished business. You're showing, he said, eyes flicking to her stomach. Are you conducting HR now? He looked away. Whether it was guilt or discomfort, she didn't care. She gathered her papers and turned to leave. You're a distraction, he said, not loudly, but sharply. Amira stopped walking. Her fingers gripped the folder in her hand. She turned halfway back, eyes steady. No, Mr. Carrington, I was your moment of weakness, and you hate being reminded that you're human. He didn't respond. He didn't chase her down. He didn't ask any of the questions clawing their way to the surface. He just stood there, alone, as she walked out. Again, only this time she walked out not as someone dismissed, but as someone who no longer needed to be seen. The ride home was silent. Amira sat beside Layla in the passenger seat, her fingers pressed to her temple as the car wove through early evening traffic. Her phone buzzed with follow-up emails from the Carrington tech team, none of them from Lennox. He wouldn't contact her. He never did when it mattered. You look like you didn't breathe the whole day, Layla said, finally breaking the silence. I didn't, Amira replied, resting her head against the window. Layla glanced over. Did he say anything? Amira nodded. He called me a distraction. Layla's jaw tightened. What did you say? That I was his moment of weakness. Layla made a sound between a scoff and a laugh. Did you leave dramatic music playing in the background too? Amira let out a tired smile. No, but I kind of wish I had. They rode the rest of the way in silence, the weight of the day settling across Amira's shoulders. She didn't cry. Not this time. She was too far past that stage. Instead, she took a deep breath, unbuckled her seatbelt, and climbed out of the car when they pulled into the lot. Once upstairs, she checked on Noah, who was asleep in his crib, face relaxed, tiny fist curled near his cheek. She stroked his head gently, whispering, You don't need to know yet how messy people can be. Amira stepped into her room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a work message. It was from Lennox. Subject, contract body. You're dismissed from all assignments effective immediately. No explanation, no decency. Just 2 lines. She stared at the message for a long time, then quietly deleted it. The next morning, her phone rang. It was not Lennox. It was Marissa, one of the design leads at Carrington Tech. Hey, Amira, she said with a slight hesitance. We were surprised to hear you're off the project. The presentation you gave last week was the cleanest layout we've seen in months. Amira forced her tone to stay professional. Thank you. I was removed from the roster, but I appreciated the opportunity to contribute. You know, I heard something strange in the hallway, Marissa said carefully, that you weren't fit for client-facing work anymore, that your focus was split. Amira's breath caught. Pregnancy. He used her pregnancy to erase her again. She cleared her throat. I wasn't aware my professionalism was up for discussion. Marissa was silent for a beat. Well, for what it's worth, your work spoke for itself. Amira thanked her again and ended the call. Then she sat, phone in her lap, chest tight. He didn't ask, didn't want to understand. He just assumed and judged. Again. That evening, as she fed Noah in the nursery, Layla walked in holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. "I brought reinforcements," she said. Amira took one and gave a small nod of gratitude. "I got fired again," she said flatly. Layla didn't look shocked. "Let me guess. No warning, no reason. Just a click and a sentence?" Amira nodded. Layla sighed, sitting beside her. "He's running from guilt, and you're the mirror he can't face." "I know," Amira said, eyes still on Noah. "So what now?" Amira exhaled. "I build a life that doesn't flinch when his name comes up." Layla leaned back. "Now that sounds like a plan I can support." 2 weeks passed without a single call, message, or knock at the door. And Amira was thankful. No drama, no unexpected visits, no false apologies. Her world had become small, but peaceful. The walls of her apartment no longer felt like confinement. They felt like safety. Her mornings were slow and quiet. She took long walks with Noah, responded to client emails with calm, and spent evenings reading books that reminded her who she used to be before she ever stepped foot in Carrington Tech. She'd taken down the last of the event posters she once kept pinned to her vision board. No more measuring herself against the company that used her, then erased her. She didn't need to prove her worth anymore. She already had. Still, there were moments like now. She sat in the nursery, Noah fast asleep in her arms, sunlight streaming through the window. She watched him breathe. His tiny chest rising and falling against her, his fingers curling around the edge of her shirt. Those eyes, hazel green, exactly like Lennox's mother, the trait that ruined her chance at remaining invisible. Noah didn't know he carried the proof of a man who never asked questions, who never fought for answers. She'd never speak poorly of Lennox to her son, but she would tell the truth, one day, that his father was human, brilliant, broken, and blind in the worst ways, and that his mother had to learn how to become whole without waiting to be chosen. Later that afternoon, Amira opened her inbox to find something unexpected. A message from a former colleague, not from Carrington Tech, but from a boutique tech firm across the city. Subject line: "Heard you're available. Are you open to a bigger canvas?" Amira sat up straighter. The email detailed a new startup building sustainable housing using smart technology. They needed someone to design their presentation space, a launch that would put them in front of major investors and journalists. They wanted someone with proven event coordination and branding layout experience. Her name had come up. She reread the message twice. Then she smiled. It felt like oxygen. This was the kind of work she wanted. Not salvaging someone else's legacy, but building something new. She replied immediately. That weekend, Layla watched Noah while Amira took the subway downtown for her first meeting with the startup team. The building was small but buzzing with energy. Young professionals, whiteboards full of wild ideas, laughter in the hallway, the kind of energy that made you want to stay late, not because you had to, but because the mission mattered. Her pitch was tight, clear, confident. No one asked about her personal life. No one commented on her son. They cared about her vision. And when the founder, a soft-spoken Nigerian-American woman named Zara, shook her hand at the end, Amira felt something she hadn't in months: respected. "We're looking to grow with people who build with heart," Zara said. "Your calm, your clarity. It tells me you've rebuilt something before." Amira smiled. "I have." Zara handed her a contract with no strings, just opportunity. For the first time in a long time, Amira felt like she wasn't waiting to be remembered. She was finally moving forward. 3 weeks into her new project, Amira found herself standing center stage in an unfinished exhibit hall, clipboard in one hand and fabric swatches in the other. The space buzzed with possibility. The lighting crew reviewed plans in one corner, while Zara and 2 brand reps discussed the launch banner on the far end. Amira's layout sketches were pinned up on easels, each labeled and color-coded. It was clean, efficient, intentional, just like her. Every day since she'd walked away from Lennox's orbit, something in her had started to settle. The tightness in her chest that once pulsed at the mention of his name had faded into quiet acceptance. She didn't wonder where he was. She didn't replay old conversations. She simply worked. Zara noticed. During their second week of collaboration, she'd pulled Amira aside. "You don't walk like someone with something to prove," she'd said. Amira blinked, caught off guard. Zara smiled. "You walk like someone who's already survived something and doesn't need to explain it." Amira had exhaled, the kind of breath you don't know you've been holding until someone makes space for it. That following Thursday, during a lunch break in the lounge, Amira sat near the tall windows, with a sandwich in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling through client samples. She paused on a photo of her holding Noah from a few days ago, his smile gummy and wide, hers soft and reflective. She tapped the photo, then swiped it into her favorites. She never used to save photos of herself. Now, she kept them. Proof that she was showing up, for herself, for her son, and for the life she was quietly building brick by brick. Across the lounge, Zara's assistant entered holding a clipboard and whispered something. Zara nodded and gestured to Amira. "Hey," she called gently, "can I steal you for 5? Amira wiped her hands and stood. Of course. She followed them out of the lounge, down the wide hallway toward the meeting gallery, where final walkthroughs were being held for the investor preview. As they entered the room, Amira's stomach dipped slightly. She saw him. Lennox, standing by the back table, arms folded, watching the pitch screen cycle through branding concepts. He hadn't noticed her yet, and for a second, she considered turning around. But then Zara leaned toward her. "Investor relations didn't tell me he'd be coming. He's representing a VC group interested in green tech. Not my favorite energy, to be honest." Amira kept her face neutral. "It's fine." Zara studied her. "Are you sure?" "I am." She walked past him without hesitation and moved toward the front to adjust the position of the main rollout banner. Her fingers didn't shake. Her heartbeat didn't stutter. He saw her just before she bent to realign a panel. His eyes widened. He hadn't expected to see her here. Not this way. Not thriving. Not commanding a space that didn't need his approval. She straightened, glanced at him once, briefly, and went right back to reviewing the layout with a digital tech lead. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because that was her closure. He was no longer a chapter to resolve. He was just someone watching from a distance, while she kept walking toward everything he never thought she'd build without him. Lennox stood near the back of the event space, but his eyes didn't move with the presentation. They stayed locked on her. Amira. She moved like she belonged here, clipboard in hand, headset resting. On her neck, voice calm as she coordinated with the audio team. She wore her confidence like armor. Nothing about her posture said former assistant. Nothing about her face suggested she even remembered who he was. And that disturbed him more than he expected. Lennox hadn't planned to be here today. His name hadn't been on the official attendee list, and he preferred it that way. He liked observing from a distance, controlling the outcome without stepping into the spotlight. But the moment he saw her, the air shifted. She was different, not just older, not just more put together. She looked free. He thought back to that last time, when he had dismissed her from the Carrington Tech project. He had written the email like it was nothing, like severing ties would stop the noise in his head, like pushing her out would erase the child-shaped suspicion that lingered in her silhouette. He'd seen her belly. He hadn't been blind. He had known. But knowing wasn't the same as being ready to accept it. He hadn't asked. He didn't want to hear an answer that couldn't be controlled. Now, watching her across the room, he felt something twist in his gut. Regret. The kind that creeps in when there are no more excuses left to cling to. Amira didn't approach him, not during the walkthrough, not during the briefing, not even when the lights dimmed and the pitch video played. She focused solely on her work, as if he were just another face in the room. No flicker of recognition, no tension in her jaw, no hesitation in her stride. She had made her peace. And he wasn't part of it. When the session ended, Amira exited first, slipping through the side door to coordinate lunch delivery and press kits. Lennox followed, not consciously, just moving in the same direction like gravity had chosen for him. He caught her just before she entered the production room. Amira. She paused, turned slowly. Her face was unreadable. Lennox. The way she said his name, like it was a label, not a memory, made his chest tighten. I didn't expect to see you here, he said. She offered a polite shrug. Most people don't. He nodded toward the staging setup. This is your work? She glanced past him. It is. I was contracted by Zara and her team last month. He hesitated. It's impressive. Her voice remained calm. That's why they hired me. Lennox stood in that silence for a moment, unsure how to close the distance without reopening old wounds. He started, then stopped. Amira raised a brow. You what? I saw you at Carrington Tech, and I reacted poorly. She gave a quiet laugh, but it wasn't warm. You fired me, Lennox. Again. I didn't know. She cut him off. You didn't ask. And with that, she turned and walked away. Lennox remained frozen in the hallway, watching Amira disappear behind a pair of swinging double doors. The sharp sound of her heels on the polished floor echoed louder than any argument he could have made. And honestly, what could he have said that wouldn't sound weak? He didn't ask. He knew that now. He had made a choice, not out of logic, but out of fear. And that choice had cost him everything that could have mattered. He wasn't used to that kind of mistake. He was a man who built his empire on precision, on strategy, on never letting his emotions dictate his decisions. But Amira was the one place, the one person, where silence had never worked in his favor. He walked away from the production wing and back into the gallery, where soft music played and the branding team mingled over coffee. A few investors approached, and he offered the necessary pleasantries, but his mind wasn't in the room. It was 3 doors down, behind a wall, next to a woman who had once let him see the worst of her storms, and who still managed to walk through his life like a sunrise he couldn't reach. Amira closed the supply closet door behind her and took a moment to breathe. The room was small, storage shelves lined with extra napkins, floral centerpieces, and battery backups. She didn't need to be in there. She wasn't avoiding the work. She was avoiding the heat rising in her chest. Seeing him again had gone better than she'd expected. She hadn't stammered. She hadn't let him disarm her. But it still stung, the way he said her name like it still belonged to him. The way he acted like acknowledgement was enough to undo what he'd ignored. She sat on a folding chair and pulled out her phone, checking Layla's messages. Layla. Noah just threw mashed banana at the fridge. Again. Your child is wild. Amira, he gets it from his absent father. Layla, so he throws and ghosts? Classic. Amira laughed quietly to herself, the tension in her shoulders easing. Layla's humor had always been her anchor. Without her, the pregnancy would have been isolating beyond words. She tucked the phone away and stood up again. Her hands smoothed down the sides of her blouse out of habit, brushing lightly over her flat abdomen. Noah was 8 months old now, growing fast, teething, babbling, becoming his own person, and Lennox had missed it all. She wasn't angry about that anymore, but she wasn't going to make it easier for him to step back in like a forgotten bookmark. Back out on the gallery floor, Zara approached Amira with a curious expression. Everything all right? She asked. Fine, Amira replied. All deliveries are confirmed. Catering just pulled in. Zara nodded, then lowered her voice. You okay with him here? Amira offered a small smile. I'm not here for him. Zara's brow arched, impressed. That's a good answer. It's the only one that keeps me moving forward. Zara patted her on the shoulder. Then keep going. An hour later, as the investor previews wrapped and guests began trickling out, Lennox found himself standing near the exit. He didn't expect Amira to speak to him again. But just before she passed by, she paused. I don't need anything from you, she said softly. Not unkindly, not apologies, not explanations, just space. He looked at her, eyes heavy. "I never meant to disappear." "You didn't disappear," she said. "You stepped back and watched me fall." He took a breath. "Is he—" Amira tilted her head. "If you have to ask now," she said, "then you're not ready to hear the answer." And with that, she walked away. This time, Lennox didn't follow. He finally understood he had no right to. Have you ever had someone try to return only after the damage was already done? Maybe they ignored your presence, dismissed your worth, or stayed silent. When you needed answers, and only showed up when you had already healed. That's what Amira faced, and instead of crumbling, she stood taller, stronger, clearer. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who didn't show up when it counted, comment "too little, too late" below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful life stories on Mr. Charles Stories. Rain returned to New York like a memory, refusing to stay buried. It wasn't heavy but constant, streaking the cafe windows where Amira sat, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of herbal tea. Across the small table, Layla bounced Noah gently on her knee, humming under her breath as the baby gurgled and reached for the lid of her coffee cup. "Don't let the barista see him do that," Layla whispered with a grin. "They act like baby hands are radioactive." Amira chuckled. "I think he's officially entered his grab everything and destroy phase." "Great. He's already more powerful than his father." The smile on Amira's face faded for just a second, enough for Layla to catch it. "What happened at the launch?" she asked gently. Amira stirred her tea. "He tried to talk to me again." "About Noah?" She nodded. "I shut it down." Layla lifted Noah up to adjust his bib, giving Amira space to speak without being stared at. "He said he didn't mean to disappear, that he didn't know. But we both know he did. He just didn't want to face it." "Or face me." Layla leaned in, eyes serious. "And now," Amira said slowly, "he wants answers. And I don't owe him any." The weight of those words sat between them. Amira wasn't angry anymore, not the way she had been in the early months when every late-night cry felt like a personal reminder that Lennox had never asked, that he'd never once shown up when she was scared and alone. But she wasn't bitter either. She had simply stopped waiting. 2 days later, Lennox stood outside Zara's office with a folder in hand and 1,000 questions swirling in his mind. He hadn't planned to come back to the event site so soon, but he found himself retracing his steps, hoping Amira might still be working in one of the prep rooms. He didn't see her. Instead, he found Zara sitting at her desk, typing quickly as her assistant recited names from a list. She looked up when she saw him. "Mr. Carrington." "Zara." There was tension there, not hostile, but cautious. "I assume this isn't about another investment round," she said, setting her pen down. "No," Lennox replied, adjusting his grip on the folder. "It's personal." Zara folded her hands. "She's not here today." "I know." "Then what are you hoping to get from this visit?" Lennox hesitated. He hated this part, the vulnerability that came with not having the upper hand. But he also knew there was no way forward without honesty. "I need to know if he's mine." Zara didn't blink. "If you want a DNA test, talk to her. If you want closure, I'm not your therapist. And if you're looking for a way to justify what you didn't do, that's between you and your mirror." Lennox swallowed hard. "He has my mother's eyes." Zara leaned back. "He also has Amira's resilience, her strength, her peace. Don't take that from him just because guilt hit late. That hit harder than he expected." "I don't want to ruin anything," he said quietly. Zara tilted her head. "Then start by not making this about you." That evening, Amira received a letter, not an email, a physical envelope. No return address, just her name, written in the clean, precise handwriting she remembered all too well. Inside was a note, short. "I saw him. I knew the second I looked in his eyes. I have questions. I want to do this right, not for me, but for him. I'm not asking for anything except a chance to listen this time. If you'll allow it. Lennox. Amira read it once. Then again, she folded it and set it on the kitchen counter. She didn't respond. Not right away. The following Sunday, Layla took Noah for the afternoon so Amira could get some rest. Instead, Amira found herself walking through a park near the Hudson, scarf wrapped tightly around her neck, thoughts unraveling with each step. She didn't want to co-parent out of obligation. She didn't want a legal fight. She didn't want Noah to grow up asking why she kept him from someone who eventually cared. But she also didn't want to let someone in just because they showed up late. As she passed a quiet bench overlooking the water, she sat and pulled out her phone. One message. We can meet. 1 hour. Public place. You listen. Nothing more. No demands. Tuesday. 4 p.m. The Garden Cafe. She hit send before she could change her mind. Tuesday came with nerves she didn't expect. Amira arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, sat at a corner table and ordered chamomile tea to calm her breath. She wore soft blue, her hair pulled into a neat bun, her face bare except for a touch of balm on her lips. She didn't come to impress. She came to stand her ground. Lennox entered exactly at 4, punctual as ever. He wore black slacks, a navy wool coat, and a look that was far more human than she'd ever seen him wear in the office. He stopped at the table. Hi. Sit. Amira said simply. He did. A waiter passed by, and Lennox waved off the menu. His eyes stayed on her. I won't waste your time, he said. I just want to say a few things. Amira folded her hands. Say them. He exhaled. I failed. I was afraid. I didn't know how to face what that night meant. I thought pushing you away would keep things clean. I thought silence was safer. It was safer for you, she said. He nodded. Yes, it was. She didn't interrupt. I saw Noah. I don't need a test. I know he's mine. But more than that, I know I missed it. I missed everything. And that's a debt I'll never be able to pay. Amira's throat tightened, but she didn't let her voice break. You missed doctor appointments, late-night fevers, first laughs, first words, first fears. You missed every single chance to show up when it wasn't convenient. I know. You didn't call. Didn't ask. You let me walk out of your life twice. I didn't know how to fix it, he admitted. Amira leaned forward. You don't get to fix me. I already did that. He met her gaze. I believe you. The silence between them was no longer cruel. It was real. He placed a small envelope on the table and pushed it toward her. What is that? A letter. For him. To open when he's old enough to read. Amira looked at it, but didn't touch it. I'm not making promises, she said. And this isn't a door reopening. It's a crack in the wall. I'll take that. She studied him. For once, he didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a man who had finally understood what it meant to lose something you can't buy back. Then, listen carefully, she said. He nodded. And Amira, for the first time, told him about Noah. Not with emotion, not to punish, but with honesty. What he loved, what scared him, what made him laugh in his sleep. She didn't tell him to step in, but she made him see what he had missed. And Lennox, for once, didn't argue. He just listened, and maybe that was the beginning of something neither of them could name yet. The next morning, Lennox stood outside a bookstore in Brooklyn, his phone still, buzzing with reminders about board meetings and pending legal contracts. But for the first time in years, none of it held weight. He wasn't there for business. He was there because of a message Amira had sent late the night before. Noah likes bedtime books about animals, especially owls. Thought you'd want to know. That was it. No greeting, no warmth. But to Lennox, it felt like oxygen. He stepped into the small shop and walked toward the children's section. He didn't know what to look for, but he found himself flipping through titles with more attention than he gave company acquisitions. One book stood out, The Owl Who Watched the Moon. The cover was simple, soft blues and greys. The story was about a curious owl who always stayed awake to protect the ones he loved, even when no one saw him do it. It felt fitting. He bought 2 copies, one for Noah and one for himself. Amira was surprised when she opened her door that afternoon to find a box sitting on her doorstep, neatly wrapped with brown string. There was no card, just the book. Inside was a sticky note on the first page. "I don't expect anything from you, but I will keep showing up in the ways I can, until it means something. L." She closed the book and sat quietly for a while, running her fingers over the cover. She didn't smile, not yet, but she didn't throw it away either. A week later, she saw him again, not by accident. She had agreed to meet him at the park near the waterfront. It was quiet on weekday mornings, and Noah liked watching the ducks by the pond. Lennox arrived early. He stood near a bench under a large tree, hands in the pockets of his wool coat, scanning the path with anxious eyes. When he saw Amira approaching, stroller in hand, he straightened, like he didn't know what to do with his posture. Amira stopped a few feet away and pulled back the stroller cover. Noah blinked up at the light, then turned his gaze toward Lennox. The same eyes, the same unbothered calm. He stared, then giggled. Something in Lennox's chest cracked open. "May I?" Amira nodded. He knelt in front of the stroller, unsure of where to place his hands. He didn't reach out. He just looked. "Hello," he said quietly. Noah babbled in response, then kicked once, amused by the sound of his own voice. "He does that when he's curious," Amira said. Lennox looked up at her. "Thank you for bringing him. I didn't do it for you." He nodded. "I know." They sat on the bench. Noah played with the strap of his jacket, while birds hopped in the grass nearby. Lennox didn't try to fill the space with questions. He didn't attempt to make it a conversation about himself. He just observed, present, alert, learning in silence. After 20 minutes, Amira began to pack up. "He gets fussy right before nap time," she said. Lennox stood. "Can I walk you both out?" She considered for a beat, then nodded. As they moved down the path, she noticed something, a subtle shift in his stride, a gentleness in how he slowed. When Noah yawned, how he opened the gate ahead of her without comment, without needing acknowledgement. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady, and for the first time, Amira felt less like she was bracing for him to disappoint her again. The next few weeks followed a cautious rhythm. Lennox never pushed. He asked to see Noah again the following weekend. Amira agreed, but only in the presence of Layla. They met at a community farmer's market, where Lennox bought Noah a handmade rattle and let the baby tug on his scarf without complaint. Amira watched from a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes scanning for signs of discomfort, of showmanship, of anything fake. But Lennox didn't perform. He simply showed up. Again and again, quietly, respectfully. He asked questions, not about Amira's life or her choices, but about Noah's personality. What makes him laugh the most? How does he calm down when he's fussy? Does he like bath time? The questions weren't for control. They were for connection. Amira answered because she wanted to, not out of obligation, but because she saw something she hadn't before: consistency. One rainy Wednesday afternoon, Amira arrived home to find a package addressed to Noah Walker. Inside was a small stuffed owl, a note, and a USB drive. The note read, "You don't have to play it, but I recorded myself reading the book, in case he ever wants to hear my voice before he falls asleep." She sat on the couch, turning the drive over in her hand. Her first instinct was caution, but her second was curiosity. That night, after Noah had settled into his crib, she plugged the drive into her laptop and slipped on headphones. Lennox's voice filled her ears, soft, careful, reading each line of "The Owl Who Watched the Moon Without Rushing, Without Performing." There were slight pauses when he turned the pages. The way he said "moonlight" sounded gentler than anything she remembered. When the story ended, there was a brief silence. And then, his voice, "Good night, Noah. I hope the owls keep watch tonight. Sleep safe." Amira closed her eyes, and for the first time since that stormy night so many months ago, she didn't feel like she was the only one carrying the weight. The first time Lennox held Noah in his arms, it wasn't planned. It happened on a mild Saturday morning in early spring. Amira had agreed to meet him at a family-owned brunch cafe tucked on the edge of Prospect Park. It was quiet, easy to access, and child-friendly, all the things she'd come to prioritize when choosing public places. They sat on the patio, Noah snug in his carrier, babbling and chewing on a silicone giraffe. Lennox sipped black coffee, still learning how to ignore the stares from nearby patrons who recognized him. But Amira? She was the center of his attention. Not because she said much. In fact, she was quieter now. But the way she moved, the way she kept Noah calm, the way she ordered her own breakfast, without hesitation or pretense, it was all different from the woman he once knew. And somehow, everything she did made him want to try harder. He had been showing up for weeks now, a few hours at the park, a delivery of supplies, quiet gestures that never asked for anything in return. But today felt different. He felt ready. Amira had just finished feeding Noah when she looked up and asked, "Would you like to hold him?" It surprised both of them. Lennox blinked. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Just sit back and hold your arms like this." She mimicked the shape, careful and relaxed. He adjusted his posture and extended his hands. Amira leaned forward, lifting Noah gently and placing him into Lennox's arms with precision. The baby blinked up at him, confused at first, then settled. A soft coo escaped Noah's lips. Lennox swallowed hard. "I didn't expect him to feel this light," he murmured. Amira smiled faintly. "Wait until he starts crawling. Then he's a 20-pound wrecking ball." Lennox looked down at the boy, his son, and felt something he hadn't let himself feel before. Responsibility, not in the legal sense, but in the sacred one. Noah reached up, tiny fingers grazing Lennox's chin. The contact made something crack inside him. Not pain. Something more like awakening. He gently rocked Noah side to side. "I missed this," he said, barely audible. Later that afternoon, they parted at the subway station. Amira strapped Noah back into the stroller, pulled her cardigan tighter, and nodded once toward Lennox. "Same time, next Saturday?" He blinked. "You're asking?" "I'm offering." Lennox stood there for a beat, processing what that meant. Progress. He gave a small nod. "I'll be there." Then she turned and walked away. He stayed until the crowd swallowed her completely. That night, Lennox sat in his penthouse apartment, lights dimmed, glass of water in hand. He hadn't touched alcohol in weeks, a quiet decision he hadn't announced to anyone. He just stopped. Every time he thought about the version of himself Amira had to deal with, the silent one, the dismissive one, the man who let her carry a child alone, he knew he couldn't afford to live in numbness anymore. He opened his laptop and pulled up a file he'd avoided for months, his own will and estate plan. It was time for an update. Meanwhile, across the river, Amira tucked Noah into his crib and sank into her living room couch, exhausted but clear-headed. She had called Layla earlier and given her the update. Brunch, first hold, no awkward tension. "Well?" Layla asked. "How did he do?" "He was nervous," Amira said, "but soft, careful, like he was afraid he'd drop something more than just a baby." Layla laughed. "Sounds like he's finally acting like a real person." "Maybe," Amira replied. "He's still figuring it out. You trust him?" Amira had paused. "No. But I believe he's trying." Layla didn't press further. She never did when Amira's tone sounded final. Now, as the apartment dimmed for the night, Amira picked up her planner and scribbled a note at the edge of the page. Let growth be visible, not explained. It was something her aunt used to say, and finally, it was starting to make sense. The following Saturday came with warmth in the air and the subtle hum of early blossoms waking along the edges of the park trails. It had rained lightly the night before, leaving behind that crisp smell of clean earth and second chances. Lennox arrived 5 minutes early. Amira noticed. He stood near the same cafe where they'd met the week before, hands tucked into the pockets of a navy windbreaker, watching the street like he wasn't just waiting, he was preparing. Amira approached with Noah in the stroller, a diaper bag slung over her shoulder and her curls tied loosely behind her head. She wore soft jeans, a linen blouse, and a look that had grown more unreadable the more grounded she became. Lennox straightened. "Hey." Amira nodded. "Morning." They walked toward the park's eastern loop in silence for a few minutes, the stroller wheels softly crunching along the gravel. "You want to hold him again?" she asked. He glanced at her, surprised. "Are you sure? You did fine last time, and I need to stretch my wrist. He's getting heavier." Lennox stopped and extended his arms. This time, there was less hesitation. Noah nestled into the crook of his elbow like he belonged there. His chubby fingers clutched the collar of Lennox's jacket as if to say, "You're late, but I'll still sit with you." Amira walked beside them, arms now free, listening to the rhythm of her son's cooing and Lennox's quiet voice narrating what he saw: ducks, trees, dogs with wagging tails. "He talks a lot to the birds," Amira said after a while. "I don't know if he's saying hello or judging their flight technique." Lennox chuckled. "He's got opinions. Must have gotten that from you." "I was thinking he got it from you," she countered. They exchanged a glance. Neutral, not flirtatious, but real. Half an hour later, they stopped on a bench shaded by a low-leaning willow tree. Lennox held Noah on his lap, bouncing him gently while Amira pulled out a bottle and passed it over. He fed him slowly, one hand cradling the bottle, the other keeping Noah steady. "You do that like someone who's practiced," she said. "I watched a few tutorials." Amira raised a brow. Lennox shrugged. "Had to start somewhere." After Noah finished, Lennox wiped his chin with a cloth Amira handed over and rested him against his chest. Noah nestled in, silent, content. "He's heavier than he looks," Lennox said quietly. "He eats well, sleeps like a snoring old man." They both laughed. It was the first time since their reconnection that laughter came naturally, not forced, not polite. Amira looked down at the stroller, adjusting the straps and pretending to fiddle with the side pockets. "Have you told anyone?" she asked. Lennox's brows furrowed. "About him?" She nodded. He exhaled. "Not yet." "Why?" He sat back. "Because once I say it out loud, everything changes." "It already changed," she said gently. "You're not preparing for fatherhood. You're already in it." Lennox didn't argue. "I want to do this right," he said. "But I also don't want to push my way into your life and disrupt whatever rhythm you've built." Amira studied him for a moment. "You are part of his story, Lennox. But that doesn't automatically mean you're part of mine." He nodded. "I get that. But," she added, "he'll need you. He deserves the version of you that shows up and stays." "I plan to—" Amira hesitated. "Intentions are one thing. History is another." Lennox's voice softened. "I'm not asking for us. I'm asking for time, for trust, for space to grow into the father he can count on." Her chest tightened. Not because it was romantic, but because it was honest. Finally, the weeks that followed unfolded slowly, deliberately. Lennox started visiting once a week, sometimes at the park, sometimes joining. Layla and Amira for breakfast, sometimes just to drop off supplies. He never overstayed, never showed up unannounced. Amira appreciated that more than he realized. One afternoon, as he handed Noah back after a walk, Amira caught herself saying, "You can stay for a bit if you want." They ended up on the couch, Noah napping in his portable bassinet, a cartoon murmuring quietly in the background. They didn't talk much, just shared space. That became the rhythm. No big declarations, no expectations, just presence. And it mattered. One evening, as Amira prepared dinner, while Noah played with measuring spoons on the kitchen floor, the doorbell rang. She opened it to find Lennox, not in a suit, not with gifts, just holding a photo album. "This is for him," he said. "My mom made it before she passed. I thought he should see the family he comes from." Amira stepped aside and let him in. They sat together on the floor, flipping through old photos, Lennox's childhood, his late brother, his parents, his graduation. Noah crawled over and slapped his tiny hand on a picture of young Lennox holding a basketball. "You were skinny," Amira teased. "I was fast. You were awkward. I had charm. They both laughed, quietly, warmly, and in that moment, something shifted. Not a return to the past, but the birth of something present. A month passed. The visits became routine. The awkwardness faded, and though they still lived separate lives, a new kind of rhythm had formed, one stitched together by shared time with Noah and quiet moments that lingered longer than either of them admitted. Amira found herself preparing for Lennox's visits without realizing it. She'd clean a little more on Saturdays, make sure Noah had on the good socks, keep an extra cup out for tea, even though Lennox always brought his own from that expensive cafe uptown. She told herself it wasn't about him, that it was about maintaining a peaceful co-parenting environment. But Layla saw through that. "Girl," she said one evening while folding laundry, "you keep acting like this man is just a diaper delivery service. Meanwhile, you're out here fluffing the couch pillows before he arrives." Amira rolled her eyes. "It's about respect. It's about nerves. It's not like that, Layla." Layla gave her a long look. "Isn't it?" Amira didn't answer, because lately she didn't know anymore. That Sunday, Lennox invited them both, Amira and Noah, to his mother's memorial garden. It wasn't a public thing. No crowd, no photographers, just a quiet space behind a non-profit center she'd helped build years before her death. "I visit her once a month," Lennox said over the phone. Figured it was time he met the woman those eyes came from. Amira was quiet for a beat, then replied, "Text me the address." When they arrived, Lennox was already there, dressed in a casual black sweater and jeans, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. Noah clung to Amira's chest in the sling, drowsy from the car ride. The garden was simple, blooming with soft whites and purples, benches tucked between winding paths. A small plaque with his mother's name rested beneath a tree. Lennox knelt, placed the flowers, and said nothing. Amira stood a few feet back, watching as he exhaled, not with drama, but with weight. He looked back at her. "She would have liked you," he said. Amira tilted her head. "Why's that?" "Because you didn't wait around hoping I'd become someone better. You just became better without me." That caught her off guard. "I didn't have a choice." He nodded. "That's what makes it powerful." After a short walk through the garden, they sat on a bench while Noah napped against Amira's chest. The breeze tugged gently at her scarf. Lennox turned slightly toward her. "I've been thinking about long-term plans." She glanced at him. "Such as custody, estate updates, a will, a trust." She inhaled slowly. "Are you expecting a legal battle?" "No," he said quickly. "I don't want to take him from you, Amira. I want to ensure if anything happens to me, he's protected. And if something happens to you, I want to be ready to step in. Not from the sidelines." She nodded, eyes still forward. "That's fair," he continued. "I've also spoken with a family therapist, someone who specializes in late paternal introductions." Now she did look at him. "You're doing research?" "I want to get it right." Silence stretched between them. Not cold, just full. Then, without looking at him, Amira asked the question that had been hovering for weeks. "Do you regret it?" Lennox didn't hesitate. "Every day." She swallowed hard. He added, "But not because of what it cost me. I regret it because of what you had to carry alone." The rawness in his voice made her shift in place. She'd spent so long not needing his apology, it never occurred to her what it would feel like to receive one. It was disarming, unfamiliar, dangerous. Later that evening, as she prepared Noah's bath, Amira caught herself staring in the mirror. Her reflection looked the same, calm, centered, whole. But inside, something was shifting. Because for the first time since this all began, she was no longer certain she wanted to keep him out. 2 weeks passed. No drama, no slip-ups, no tension, just presence. Lennox came by once during a weekday, not to visit Noah, but to drop off a care package after Amira mentioned she had a bad cold. He brought lemon ginger tea, a jar of soup from a local spot, and a note that simply read, "Thank you for doing what I couldn't, even when you were hurting too." Amira read it twice, then placed it on her fridge, not out of sentiment, but because something in her heart finally let her. She didn't know if it was trust, but it was something. One Saturday morning, Lennox joined them for a walk through the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. Noah was growing fast now, laughing louder, crawling faster, pointing at everything and nothing with wild excitement. As they strolled, he kept leaning from his stroller, yelling "Bah!" every time he saw a butterfly or a flower. Lennox stayed close, not hovering, just present. At one point, he reached into the stroller and picked Noah up without hesitation, balancing him on his hip. Noah reached out and patted his father's cheek. Lennox chuckled. "You've got strong hands, kid." "Too strong," Amira said. "He nearly pulled Layla's earring out last week." They laughed, easy and warm. Amira paused near a bed of orange tulips, adjusting her scarf. She felt Lennox's gaze settle on her for a moment. Not invasive, not hungry, just soft. She turned to meet it. He looked away, but the energy between them had already shifted. Again, that evening, after they said goodbye and Noah was tucked into bed, Amira sat on her couch and stared out the window. The city lights blinked in the distance. She sipped warm tea, blanket over her knees, thoughts tangled like yarn. What were they doing? They weren't dating. They weren't just co-parenting either. They were close, closer than most broken stories ever get. And yet still worlds apart from the truth. Neither of them had dared say aloud that something was still there, buried under the hurt, under the missed years, under the silence. But it was there, alive. 3 days later, Lennox texted her. "You ever think about what would have happened if I had asked?" Amira read it, heart pacing faster. She typed, stopped, typed again. Finally, she sent, "I try not to, because it makes me hate you less." No reply came. Not that night, not the next morning. But then, that afternoon, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail. She played it on speaker while folding Noah's laundry. Lennox's voice came through, quiet but steady. "I never asked because I didn't know how to be anyone other than who I was. And I thought keeping control was the same as being in control. But you let life happen to you even when it hurt, and I hid. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know something. If I could go back and do one thing differently, I would have looked at you, really looked, and I would have asked, not because I deserve to know, but because you deserve to be seen." Amira sat still. The warmth from the dryer faded. Tears didn't come, not yet. But something inside her, something quiet, finally exhaled. Spring warmed into early summer. Noah turned 9 months old. He now pulled himself up on furniture, babbled in full emotional sentences only he understood, and pointed at Lennox every time he walked through the door with wide, toothless glee. "He thinks you're a cartoon character," Amira joked one afternoon as Lennox scooped Noah up and spun him slowly in the air. "Hopefully not the villain," Lennox replied, pressing a kiss to the boy's cheek. "You're still on probation." That earned him a smile. These days, smiles were easier, softer, and more dangerous, because Amira didn't know what they were building anymore, only that it no longer felt like co-parenting. It felt like something between healing and temptation. One evening, when the city hummed with that golden hour glow, and the air smelled like cooked food and blooming sidewalks, Lennox stayed longer than usual. Noah had fallen asleep after dinner. Lennox offered to clean the bottles, while Amira folded the laundry in the living room. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't special, but it felt like home. When he emerged from the kitchen, drying his hands with a towel, he paused in the hallway. Amira sat on the floor, folding a tiny blue onesie, her head tilted to one side as she smoothed the fabric, her lips curved in a half-smile. She didn't see him watching her. He hadn't seen peace like that in years. And suddenly, words came before he could stop them. "You're the strongest person I know." She looked up, startled. He stepped closer. "Not because you had to be," he continued, "but because you chose to be." Amira set the onesie down. "You don't have to say things like that, Lennox." "I know. Because it doesn't change what happened. I know. But you're saying it anyway. He nodded. She exhaled. Then, slowly, she said, I don't want to fall into anything with you because it feels familiar. I wouldn't want that either. I need more than apologies. And showing up. He sat on the floor across from her, cross-legged, hands on his knees. What do you need? Amira's voice was calm, unshaken. Proof. That the man who hurt me isn't the man trying to come back. Lennox didn't reply right away, but he didn't flinch either. I'm not asking you to let me back in, he said. I'm asking to be worthy of the door, whether it opens or not. They sat there in silence. Noah stirred lightly in the other room, and for once, the quiet between them didn't feel unfinished. It felt safe. The next week unfolded without tension, but not without weight. Amira moved through her days like someone balancing more than tasks. She kept things simple, feeding schedules, work calls, short walks with Noah. Yet every now and then, her mind wandered back to that evening. Lennox sitting, cross-legged across from her, asking not for entry, but for worth. It wasn't grand, it wasn't performative, and somehow that made it harder to ignore. That Friday, rain returned. Thick, slow drops pattered against her windows as Noah napped, and Amira sorted client reports on the couch. She wore thick socks and a hoodie Lennox had accidentally left during one of his visits. It was soft, comfortable. She didn't take it off. Around 4 p.m., her phone buzzed. Lennox, caught near your building. Heavy rain. Can I wait it out there? She stared at the message. A simple request. No expectation. She typed, yeah, doors open. He arrived damp and wind-blown, holding a brown paper bag and umbrella. Sorry, he said, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. Didn't think it hit this fast. You always come bearing food. That's the only reason I keep letting you in, she teased. He smiled. Noted. They shared plates of stir-fried noodles and ginger chicken while Noah napped in the next room. The window fogged over slightly, the warmth inside making the storm feel far away. After dinner, they settled in the living room. Lennox sat on the far side of the couch, a mug of tea in his hand. Amira sat across from him, knees tucked beneath her, flipping through a parenting magazine she barely read. Eventually, he broke the silence. Do you ever think we got put on pause instead of erased? She glanced up. What do you mean? We weren't ready then. I know I wasn't. But now, I don't see you the same way I did when we met. Amira closed the magazine. And how did you see me before? Quiet, composed, like someone who wouldn't ask for too much. And now, he looked directly at her, like someone who deserves more than I can give, but I still want to try. Her chest tightened, not from confusion, from clarity, because deep down she wanted to believe him, not for her, but for who she had become. Noah stirred. Amira stood, disappearing down the hallway. She returned a few minutes later, the baby now asleep against her chest in a sling, his face soft and calm. Lennox stood without being asked. I'll get my things. But Amira didn't move. You don't have to go. He froze. She looked at him, really looked, for the first time in a long time. I'm not making promises, she said. I'm not asking. She took a breath. Then stay a while. Lennox didn't smile, but something in his shoulders relaxed. He hung up his coat. Noah snuggled deeper into her chest, and in the soft hum of stormlight and second chances, Amira sat beside the man who once left her without asking. This time, she was the one inviting him to stay. The next morning came without ceremony. No confessions, no kiss, no fast forward into romance. Just a quiet kitchen, the smell of coffee, and two people moving through a shared space without stepping on each other's peace. Lennox had fallen asleep on the couch. Amira found him there when she rose to warm a bottle for Noah. His arm rested behind his head, his chest rising and falling in the slow rhythm of someone at rest. She didn't wake him. Instead, she moved through the kitchen like she had every other morning, since Noah was born, steady, alert, and always 2 steps ahead. But something about the silence felt different, less empty, more full. She warmed the bottle, tested it on her wrist, and walked back into the nursery. Noah stirred with soft whimpers, fists balled at his sides. Amira scooped him up, cradled him gently and whispered, "We're okay." And they were. By the time Lennox woke, the apartment smelled faintly of toasted bread and baby lotion. He sat up slowly, ran a hand over his face, and looked toward the kitchen, where Amira stood in an oversized t-shirt, feeding Noah in her arms. She didn't acknowledge him right away, just finished the feeding, burped the baby, and gently rocked him while staring out the window. Lennox walked toward her with quiet steps. "Morning," he said. She looked over her shoulder. "There's coffee. Toast, too, if you want it." "Thanks." He moved toward the counter, poured himself a cup, and leaned against the edge. Noah shifted in Amira's arms, eyes fluttering open, one tiny hand resting on her chest. "He sleeps lighter now," she murmured. Lennox nodded. "You get any rest?" "Enough." She looked at him fully now. "Did you?" His smile was faint. "Best couch sleep I've had in years." That pulled a small laugh from her lips, the kind she didn't bother hiding. She walked past him to lay Noah down, and when she returned, her eyes held something softer, uncertain, but no longer guarded. Later that afternoon, Lennox helped fix the curtain rod in Noah's room. They didn't talk much, just shared tools, exchanged glances, and listened to music play low on Amira's speaker. He didn't push for conversation. He didn't try to ask what this was, and because of that, she didn't pull away. Afterward, they sat on the floor in the living room again. Noah was down for his nap. The apartment was clean, still, peaceful. "You ever wonder what would have happened if we didn't share a child?" she asked, suddenly. Lennox thought for a moment. "I think I still would have fallen for you eventually, but I would have been too scared to say it." Amira blinked. "Why?" "Because you're the kind of woman who sees through people, and I wasn't someone worth being seen by." She didn't respond right away. Then, softly, "You're closer now." Lennox looked at her. "And is that enough?" She shook her head. "Not yet. But you're not shutting the door." "No," she said, "because for the first time, I trust that if I did, you'd still be standing on the other side." That silence between them, it wasn't final. It was a beginning. A few weeks passed. Life didn't change all at once. There was no magical transformation, no slow-motion montage with swelling music. But the changes were real. Lennox didn't fade. He kept showing up. He texted to check in, not about the baby, but about her. He brought groceries without asking. He fixed a leak under her sink. He sat on her balcony in silence while she cried one night after a long week of single parenting. Noah was growing. His personality was blooming. Tiny grins, soft babbles, the occasional laugh when Lennox made weird faces. Amira still didn't call what was happening family. She didn't need to. She watched. She waited. She witnessed. And slowly, she started to believe in the consistency of presence over the intensity of apologies. One evening, Lennox walked in with takeout, Thai food from her favorite spot. "How did you remember?" she asked, eyeing the jasmine rice and red curry. He shrugged. "I listen now." Amira smiled. They ate at the table. Noah slept in his crib. Outside, the city buzzed, but inside, everything slowed. Halfway through dinner, Lennox set down his fork. "I've been talking to someone," he said. She looked up. "A counselor, therapist, actually." Amira paused. "For what?" "My guilt, my anger, my inability to trust anyone who gets too close." She didn't say anything. He continued. "I didn't want to be like my father, distant, cold, focused on empires, not people." Amira's eyes softened. Lennox looked at her. "You made me realize I already was." The weight of his words sat heavy between them. Then Amira said, "Healing isn't for me. It's for you. But I'm proud of you anyway." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. And for once, she didn't pull away. Another weekend, they took Noah to the park. It wasn't for a big reason, just fresh air. Lennox held the stroller with one hand and kept pace beside her. They walked quietly for a while, watching children run, leaves dance, clouds shift above them. Then Lennox stopped and turned toward her. "Amira," he said, voice low, "there are still things I need to fix in myself. But I want to fix them with you beside me, not from afar." She looked at him, lips parting slightly. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight," he added quickly. "I just needed you to know that I'm not looking for a way out. I'm looking for a way in, into whatever future you'll let me earn." Amira's heart pressed against her ribs, but her voice stayed calm. "I'm not interested in fairy tales." "Neither am I." She studied him. "So, what do you want?" His reply was steady. "Truth, respect, and your trust, brick by brick." Amira nodded slowly, and then she whispered, "One brick at a time." 6 months later, Noah turned one. Their apartment was filled with balloons, laughter, and the scent of cinnamon cupcakes. Layla came. So did a few neighbors. No one rich, no one famous. Just real people. People who loved deeply and showed up when it mattered. Lennox handed Noah a small gift, a wooden block with the word "strong" carved into it. Amira smiled at the symbolism. After the party, once everyone left and the dishes were done, Amira stepped out to the balcony. Lennox joined her. "Do you remember the first night I ever held him?" he asked. She nodded. "I do. I didn't feel ready. You weren't." He glanced at her. "But I am now." Amira turned toward him fully. "I know," she whispered. He stepped closer. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She raised a brow. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Amira's breath caught. "I'm not asking you to be mine forever tonight. I'm asking if I can keep showing up until you believe that I will never leave again." She stared at the box, then at him. And slowly, she nodded. "Yes. If you believe love is shown through actions, not promises, type show up, stay, grow in the comments. Tell us, have you ever forgiven someone who failed you, only to see them become better? And if this story reminded you that healing and second chances matter, hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more life-changing stories from Mr. Charles Stories.